everyone. I'm Elena Armijo, and I'm the founder of the C-Suite Collective. This is a company I created for executive leadership coaching and wellness that supports C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and founders. Now, more than ever, businesses are running faster and with fewer resources. Burnout, overwhelm, disconnection, and disillusionment are the new norm for teams struggling with an old paradigm. At the C-Suite Collective, we believe deeply that providing massive support for your teams through executive coaching and holistic practices will create an inclusive culture, higher levels of performance, sustainable change, and the organizational impact you desire. You can find us at the c-suitecollective.com. Who would you have to be this year to reinvent your relationship to your body? We're going to explore that in our coaching tip for the month. Today in our interview segment, we have Sonal Bhatia, a physician, educator, speaker, and the former chief medical officer of rare disease at Pfizer. I loved our conversation. She is an incredible, wise soul who is out with a mission in the world to change how we relate to ourselves, not only mentally and spiritually, but physically through Eastern and Western medicine, meeting and combining for more powerful impact. I hope you enjoy the episode today, and remember, something powerful resides within you. I'm here to support you in seeing it and creating it. Who would you have to be this year to reinvent your relationship to your body? Oftentimes during the new year, we find people are more invigorated to look at what they want to release from the past year, what they want to call in this year as we transition from one year to another. Typically, people are in a conversation about getting back into relationship with something that might have been out from the previous year. Oftentimes, we hear that a lot of people in the wellness industry will look at your body. So this is exercise, this is direct correlations to gym memberships going up, and anything to get back into relationship with what you might have let go of the past year. What I enjoy about this conversation outside of a get back on the treadmill look is what would be created if you could think about a new relationship to your body this year. So before you go into any doing, what is that relationship that you want with your body this year? For me, that looks like slowing down, listening more to what my body needs moment to moment. It looks like taking breaks in between calls and not going back to back without stretching or walking around. It looks like 2 large walks a day when I can with my pups. I know weather-wise at different parts of the world, this may be possible or not in the month of February. But for me, it's at least an hour outside walking around with my dogs during the morning before I start my day. It really just helps me to ground and remember that sitting at my desk all day, number 1, isn't healthy for me. But number 2, I get to be outside walking around for the time being. All of this is in service of creating a relationship with myself. I want to be listening to my body's cues instead of numbed out or waiting and fitting them in at the end of the day. So that's my goal this year, is listening to cues, listening to whispers that might happen during the day, and not waiting to address it, and instead creating a time to respond intentionally. So start with the relationship. What does that look like? What do you want to feel? What do you want to experience this year with your well-being and your body? And then the big question, who would you have to be to create this relationship or reinvent it? This is a tricky question because this is oftentimes where we have more wiggle room with ourselves and we say, oh, I'll just practice, or I'll make a structure that will hold myself accountable to it, or I'll phone a friend and have an accountability buddy. And while those are all beautiful things, and I definitely think they help people through, the who would you have to be question is a little bit deeper. So who I would have to be is committed to loving myself in a way that I never have before. And even that word loving, it gets a bit tricky, right? At least in my brain, I have a lot of judgments around like, well, what does that actually mean for myself? And for me, it means that I would have to be present enough and clear and focused enough to be listening to my body. That could be one angle that I take with this conversation, is who would I have to be? I also would have to be kinder to myself. That's the thing in the way of committing to moving forward and changing my relationship to my body. So these are just places to start. I don't have all the answers. Like I always like to say, they're just tips that I'm thinking about in the world. And I'd love to hear what you have for them as well. So if you feel like writing it on my email or my newsletter with some of the tips of your own, I'd love to hear them. Sonal, it's such my absolute pleasure to have you starting the podcast in January 2025. I think that you are one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I often think about the first time that I meet people. And I know we had multiple connection points before we actually really got one-to-one time. But the thing that I was struck by when I first met you was your huge heart. And being in medicine, which I hope you'll share more about your journey with everybody, but it struck me as how your purpose of serving humans in the world and the largeness of your heart, how much it opens and holds people and serves the world and serves yourself too, was such a beautiful model when I first met you and had so much light coming out of you. So just thank you so much for who you've been for me and for the world, and welcome.
Oh, thank you. What a lovely, lovely introduction, Elena. And it's been such a pleasure getting to know you and being part of the journey that you're creating, not just for yourself, but for all of us and for the world who's listening to us.
Oh my goodness. We're going to have some fun today. Well, my first question is, tell us how you even got into medicine. What's your origin story, if you will, around service?
You know, service began for me. I actually was born in Mexico City, and I grew up in a place where there wasn't any diversity. And I stood out as a sore thumb because my DNA is Indian. So I obviously stood out in that environment. And I used to witness how people treated everyone differently just based on skin color. And it bothered me a lot. I think that's when I started to get very defensive about the underdogs and helping them fit in. When I moved to Toronto, I got exposed to so many cultures trying to blend in. And, it's never perfect, but it was so wonderful for me to see a small world of what we call humanity in a small area at that age. And I was 14 or 15. And that's when I started to defend people and want to heal their hearts. I think the healing of their hearts is what drove me to medicine.
Wow.
And I mean, later on in life, I discovered that my grandfather was a healer. And I think part of it is in your DNA. You just have to find your journey. So my education in school, like in Toronto, I actually studied cell molecular biology. And I was like, oh, wow, fascinated with what the future science could offer patients. And that drove me to medical school.
Wow, what a journey. And what did you find when you entered medical school? Were you excited? Was it what you thought it would be? Is there any story there?
Yeah, so I thought medicine would be having a little black bag and going to patients' homes and treating them. But I think I was stuck in my ancestors' world. But this is modern medicine that we were training in, and I trained in what I now call allopathic medicine or Western medicine here in the United States. So I learned the entire U.S. healthcare system, and there's pros and cons to every healthcare system around the globe. Nothing is perfect. I think what I struggled with as I was going through that pathway is that you actually couldn't really help patients who had bigger needs, like the rare disease patients or the patients whose journeys they take 7 to 10 years to be diagnosed, and who is actually producing a medicine for them. So when I realized that as a physician, I only have a toolkit and a toolbox to deal with, it was frustrating. I felt like my heart was exploding, like, no, this is not enough. There's so much more that we as scientists and doctors need to be doing. And that propelled me to actually leave the world of practice. And that was my first step out into, I want to say, the universe, and say, well, what am I going to do next? And you don't get trained up for that in medical school. So I left, and I had to now figure out what would be that next pathway. And it was a
Wow.
scary time for me.
I was just going to say, I imagine there's so much fear in that. And what gave you the courage to step forward with that move and step into the universe in a big way?
I always recall a gut instinct, and it's that instinct where you're not aligned. And when your heart, your body, and your soul are not aligned, there's something wrong. And I felt that. My best friend in med school passed away from breast cancer. She was in her 20s. I
Mm.
felt frustrated and angry in a way that I said, if I stay and do this, I'm not going to be doing the best service for patients. I need to do something bigger. That momentum guided me into oblivion because I followed what my soul was telling me. I followed my heart, I followed my mind, and I trusted and surrendered to the fact that I would be able to find another path forward. But it was the unknown, it was a black hole.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. There's so many people I think that see that that might be the next thing to step into. And it's just tremendously courageous because there is so much fear,
Yeah.
and I hear people waiting for the fear to be gone or different before they take a step. And in your case, you did the opposite. You said, okay, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so then where did that leave you? What was next?
So that actually led me about, oh my God, almost 2 decades ago to
Mhm.
a consulting firm where I discovered the work that they were doing for various different types of pharma companies, big size, small size, mid size. And in that mindset, what I recognized is that they were actually working with new molecules, new research,
Mm.
a very rich pipeline of medicines. It was the future. And what I loved about it, it was the future of medicines that were going to help an unmet need that currently existed that physicians didn't even know. Physicians are only going to write a prescription and treat a patient through their journey. But
Mm.
what about those future new on medicines that come up? Those
Mm.
are the areas that was very exciting for me. And I was fascinated by the science. I was fascinated about the ability to solve for a problem that physicians didn't even know existed. Like there are times when you actually diagnose someone and don't realize there's a different diagnosis because it hasn't even yet been discovered. And that was the equation I wanted to be part of. Find the
Mm.
medicines for a disease that patients don't even know they have, but have spent a decade searching for them. And that's rare diseases. Many patients after 7 to 10 years of a diagnosis will find out, I finally know what is my disease, but there's
Wow.
no medicine to treat me. And that's
Hmm.
the second shock that they get. And so pharma, I realized, is helping to develop all these potential solutions. Now, it doesn't mean that they have a 100% success rate, but it's the underdog that is actually being helped. And we provide that hope to them to be able to deliver on that promise.
Wow. That's incredible. So your journey led you to pharma, and after the consulting firm ended up into a bigger corporation, I believe, right? Pfizer?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
So I joined a bigger pharma company.
okay. And what was that transition like from consulting to the bigger company? Did you have any fears? Or were you completely excited and ready, or what was the experience
I
like?
was not ready at all. I actually remember I remember somebody who worked with me in pharma saying, "Oh, why are you not working on this side?" And I'm like, "Oh, is that something I could do?" I didn't even know.
Mm.
And then I said, "Well, let me see. Let's see what that's all about." So I started to look at job opportunities and I applied for a few and I was lucky to have two offers and I picked one and then I walked into a new role with no idea what I was doing and immense fear. The same amount of fear that I felt when I told my residency directors that I wasn't going to go down the classical physician pathway and they were like, what's wrong with you, right? And it was that same feeling that I started to recognize as part of me telling me, go do something, take that leap of faith, go try it. And worst comes to worst, I go back to where I started from, and it wasn't a bad place in the consulting firm. So that drove me to a whole new world in pharma.
Wow. Well, and what did you discover about yourself in this new world?
I spent, as I was learning the job and getting feedback on how I was doing it, I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I've actually been the consultant for many of these directors, and now I'm doing exactly what I was doing for them, but with more ownership and more visibility as to the bigger purpose of the why behind. Because
I
I
love
think once you realize, oh, we're doing this little project, but the benefit is going to be really huge for patients. Who are those patients, and what is that future pipeline looking like? That panorama started to expand for me over my years in big pharma, and it was one that I wouldn't have had exposure to before. And little by little, I started to build skill sets and the building blocks to get even more exposure onto that big picture of what a company like pharma does and the
it. Hmm.
impact and benefit that they have to every single patient that they can impact.
Wow. Well, and I know that in our country, I want to actually move through the next transition that you had because I know you've done another big transition recently. But through the lens of health and wellness, what do you see you're moving into, or really what is pharma moving into, and how is that working in conjunction with doctors now? Because traditionally, pharma has a bad rap sometimes, right? There's people who love it and people who don't like it, and there's a lot of politics around it. So, outside of the noise of all of that, what do you see as the possibility moving forward with pharma, and maybe even just sharing what your next move was out of it?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great question because over the last 17 years in pharma, I have had a lot of exposure leading up to leadership and mentoring people and growing people and ultimately growing an entire organization within rare diseases and the impact of bringing a medicine that has benefited patients that potentially wouldn't actually be around if they didn't have access to this medicine is so it fills your soul because you know that the work that you've done is making an impact not just to them but their caregivers, their loved ones. Families are really grateful to you. But on the other end, you see that we run trials and then we don't meet the phase 3 parameters and they fail. And
Mm.
now all those patients that were waiting with immense hope no longer have access to that potential hope. So you go back to your pipeline, you start to look at the landscape and you say, well, what else is there for this different rare disease? Or even I worked on hyperlipidemia drugs to lower cholesterol. I've worked on oral anticoagulants. So all of them have had a very important space in the therapeutic area and journey of a physician. And, we're, in the advent of vaccines and oncology medicines. And I think they all have a tremendous role in the lifestyle of modern medicine, I will
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, there's been an inkling, like that fire started to burn again in my gut. And it's like, there's more than this. And what is that more? And I started an area that I was very passionate about learning myself was meditation.
Mm.
And every year I would have this goal. I'm going to like 2020, whatever, like New Year goal. I'm going to meditate this year. And it never happened until a friend of mine told me about a particular program, Transcendental Meditation. And she's like, oh, you should look at it. And I didn't. And then 2 days later, somebody else told me about it. So for me, that's a sign. I
Yeah.
truly believe signs are there. If you don't go down a path, you're re-guided back down that path until you actually open that door. And that door opened me up to trying it out. I instantly took it on. I loved it. I loved how I felt about it. And I started to notice changes in myself. Like my Apple Watch was saying, hey, there's a trend in your vitals that it was measuring. Everything was actually lowering, and I didn't do anything different. I wasn't
Mm.
exercising differently, eating differently, but actually my stress level was coming down because I was meditating.
Wow.
And to me that became it was almost like, wait, is this a secret? Like, how is that possible? And I started to look on their website more and be part of the group that was meditating. There's a lot of people out there who want to find a community of meditators. And through that, I got exposed to Ayurveda. Now, I've heard about Ayurveda. I know very, very little bit of it, but I did know that there was a US university that was offering holistic integrative healthcare with a baseline of learning of Ayurveda. And
Mhm.
for me, that was fascinating because I'm like, oh, I have to do this fellowship. And I called them up and I said, when's your next program? They're like, well, we're starting next month. And I'm like, well, do you have a program for physicians? Because I don't want to learn all the organ systems all over again. They're like, yes, we actually are starting that program. And you would be perfectly suited based on my journey. So that is where I am right now. I would say, 6 months away from completing my fellowship now.
Yeah.
And over the last year and a half, I have applied so much of the Ayurvedic knowledge into my own self as well as my community. Any of my friends, my peers, my direct reports, anyone who wants to listen to me knows that I'm talking about health and wellness from the Eastern ancient medicine of Ayurveda, which is not a pill. I think there's place for pills and we need them, but there
Mhm.
is a place of let's reset our body and our inner intelligence and our body's ability to heal from within. And
Wow.
that is so powerful because we all seek external healing. But
Mhm.
when you think of your body as a source of healing itself, then you have to recognize, what am I doing? What do I need to change? And I want to teach everyone now, like I'm so passionate about, let's get everyone to know it's not a secret. It shouldn't be a secret. Let's all at least know what it is. Now, if you choose to or not to apply it, that's a different challenge, but knowledge is key. And when everyone starts to understand the why behind these principles, you start to realize it's so easy to implement and you just apply them.
That's so beautiful. And what is the possibility of healing yourself from the inside out for humanity?
We're all in a place right now where there's a lot of healing to be done. And it's not just organic healing, right? We're hurt by what's happening around our world. We're hurt
Mm.
by many different elements politically or at a global level. And and it's impacting organically how we feel. So sometimes you have to recognize that everything in your world and every Instagram feed that you're following through has a direct impact into your body system. So I truly believe, and there's so much science to showcase this, is that when we start to heal within, we're raising our own consciousness because Ayurveda is a way of living consciously. It's it's breathing consciously, it's eating consciously, it's eating the right things consciously, it's meditating consciously. And when you do that, you elevate everybody else's conscious level. And I think that if we can get enough people to maintain this type of lifestyle and inner healing, it's going to help everybody else to remove that anger and that element of even fear and confusion and hurt. We start to heal each other through our own energies because we have the energetic ability to not just heal ourselves, but be in a room where we can sense others and heal them through our words, through the things we do. It could be really powerful, but we do live in a world where we are singular. And I think this is a community based mindset that we are all connected. And if we're all connected, everything I do for myself is about to help people that I'm connected with.
Wow. We've gotten so far away from that, right? In the individualistic mindset, even those who are trying to focus on themselves to then join the collective. I think there's some stages in there that people go through, but my experience is that people have lost sight of this piece, right? That
Yes.
eventually this is the community collective aspect that we're looking to heal everybody together and rise, rise everybody's. internal systems for consciousness.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, I've meditated individually, but
Mm.
when I have been in a group of like-minded meditators sitting in the same room, the intensity of the meditation and the depth of it is so different and
Mm.
so deep. We've had different experiences just sitting in the same room
Mhm.
where it's not just us, it's others that
Mhm.
you at the end we're like, wait, did you really experience that? Because I did too. How is that possible that two people sitting in a room with their eyes closed can experience the same thing across a room? And I think it's because, as you said, the word collective is beautiful. It is a collective mindset and a collective shift that we all have to pursue. But it's so easy. And I keep saying it's easy because it doesn't require reading a book or applying a new diet system that is so hard that you fall off the wagon after a week. It's something that is intuitive. Your body, the moment you apply it to yourself, your body will have an, oh, I remember this. I know what this
Mhm.
feels like and I actually feel good and I'm going to continue this. So the collective is quite powerful.
Wow. Well, and as you finish up your program in the next 6 months, what are you hoping to create or launch in the world?
Yeah. So, I've done a lot of wonderful work in the world right now as it pertains to Western medicine and bringing medicines to patients. At the same time, I've learned the Eastern. And what I want to do is be able to give everyone the skills to balance both. Because
Mm.
I'm not saying that we should go back to living the way our ancestors did, because we've evolved so much as humans. We have access to a lot of different tools that they didn't have. But
Mhm.
there is a beauty of simplicity in what we can apply, utilizing both and balancing. It's almost like bringing Ayurveda to modern life and letting it be part of modern life. And I want to be the voice that shares exactly how to do it in very simplistic principles and individually, because Ayurveda is all about every body is different. They categorize three different constitutions. They're called doshas, but for simplicity, I'll say they're in constitutions, and everybody has some sort of constitution. It may be a balance of all three, a mix of two, or maybe a big dominance of one. But each one provides the patient or the individual. I don't like to say patient because I believe this avoids you from becoming a patient.
Ah,
And,
nice.
and that's the goal. Let's prevent ourselves from becoming a patient by knowing exactly how our body operates and why we should be having a certain lifestyle, incorporating certain key elements into our diet, like spices, or figuring out how we're aligned to the solar system and why we're creatures of the solar system. And as women, we're creatures of the lunar system. And
Yeah.
what does that mean in the Ayurvedic system? And how do you apply it so that you're living those cycles and changing your diet with every seasonal change that comes through? When we recognize that, then we're going to have make those simplistic changes and realize maybe I don't need those medicines that I was on. Maybe my anxiety is no longer there. Maybe I'm in a much better mood now. Maybe the meditation has helped me to get through the challenges I had at work. And maybe I'm no longer a patient because I have taken care and activated my inner intelligence. And that's what I want. I want people to know how to activate your inner intelligence, do it, reflect on how good it is, and go and teach it out to more people. And the more we do that, the more we're going to get a lot of a movement in the right direction of becoming healthy beings living on this planet. We're spiritual beings in a human body. We need
Mm.
to take care of our human body so we can continue to do the work we're meant to be doing on this planet. And for that, we need to have healthy bodies. And that's what we've moved away from over a lot of years.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and I really love your messaging around how it can be a both and. because oftentimes we are pitted against conversations, right? And what I mean by that is it's either pharma and pills and drugs, and this is the way, or straight Eastern medicine, this is the way. And I've never heard anybody talk about the integration of them the way you do. And I really love your stand for it to not be an either or conversation, but that it's the world coming together to work as one. And depending on your life and depending on your circumstances and depending on just basically what you want to try, there's more choices available on the table now. Is that how you have it, or do you have it a different way?
No, that was beautifully said. I think as humans we are creatures of balance. And the way to get balance is to have access to everything that we need. It cannot be all pharma and pills. It cannot be all just lifestyle. Or maybe it can, and every human's different. But I think when you recognize that there's a complete balance and there's a very important place for the wonderful science that's coming out of research right now, it is spectacular. I think we got through the pandemic for a reason. And a lot, like my friend who passed away from breast cancer, in today's day, that doesn't happen at that age. It's because science has evolved. But if I were to look back at her journey, I would realize that there were changes she could have made earlier on and perhaps prevented it. And
Yeah.
so I think that is where there's a learning of how do you prevent yourself from getting the disease or diseases. And once you get them, there are, thankfully, in our generation, in our world, the way to solve for those. But once you get those, they shouldn't be for life. You should be able to then reset your body back to that balance that every human should have. And for that, you go back to Ayurveda. So you're going to be picking and choosing the tools that work for you. And that's why every human is very different.
Wow. I love that. What a cool stand. And so how have your colleagues reacted to this? I just want to get a quick interpretation of what people are, what they're saying
You
after
know,
watching this move.
I I think in the corporate world right now, this can be incorporated very easily. And I say that because I've tried it. So I have led team meetings, and when I am on those, when I have everyone face to face, we of course talk about the business and we deal with the strategies. And you get to a point of the day where there's only so much more science and information and business that you can take in. I have brought in a meditational, someone to actually do a guided meditation because I want everyone to lead even their work mindfully and consciously. And even taking 15, 20 minutes in the middle of your day to pause, reflect, close your eyes, go back inwards. It actually resets your blood pressure. It brings down your heart rate. It sets you back to baseline, which humans need to do a few times a day. And it also brings down stress levels. And then when we're done, you go back to working. And when I did this and I tried this in one of my team meetings, I had about 50 people in the room and we meditated together. When everyone went home, they didn't send me notes about how great the meeting was. They sent me notes of how valuable the learning of that meditation was. And that made me realize that they're hungry for it. So I actually spoke to the head of HR and I said, this should be something that we bring to the company. So they're already starting to give access to meditation tools to all colleagues, all personnel, and even teach them about meditation. I mean, we've done all kinds of different things because everyone's going to gravitate to something slightly different. There is no one size fits all for everybody. And so the more tools you give, it's good because everyone can pick that. But there is the risk of, well, now you've given so many tools, nobody knows what to do. So the what and the how and the why becomes so important. So when I start in a smaller group and I open it up with saying, well, we're going to do this now, and I'm telling you why, we've done a lot of great work. Now it's time to go within, heal, reset, and explain to them the why. Then they meditate and it really, really resonates. They instantly get it. When I started meditation, I couldn't do it with the apps. I needed something different. I needed someone to write on a board exactly what was happening when I meditate. And I mean, the science in me needed to understand how I was transcending and what happens there,
Yeah.
and the why behind it, and the research, that the plethora of research that exists on what happens when you're in meditative state and why it's so important. That stuck to me, and that is the reason that meditation stayed with me. Now I've started to also share with friends and colleagues who say, oh, well, I'm not playing my MD role here anymore. It's really, I've been feeling this aches or whatever. And I ask them a few questions. I'm like, consider this tweak in your diet, or have you considered walking in the morning for 15 minutes to just get your body in moving. And those little tweaks are not challenging, but they come back saying, oh my God, that was so amazing, or that really helped, or you know what, I started to, I was worried I was getting pre-diabetic, and my doctor just said my numbers went back to normal. And I said, well, you needed to remove certain ingredients from your diet, and you did. And you noticed that change instantly. Now you just continue that because you don't want to be a patient who has diabetes, right? So these little tweaks, I have been applying them to those who are open and willing to hear what I'm learning through my program, and it's been really impactful to them.
That's amazing. Wow. Such great knowledge and research out there for people to get their hands on. We're going to talk about how they can contact you directly in a second. But the last question I have for you today around all of this is, what do you hope to see in 2025? We're starting a new year.
Yeah, I have big hopes for the world. I'll say the first place to start is, if you really want to learn about how to apply this, contact me, and you'll have the information, and I'm happy to do one-on-ones. I would also love to come and join larger group and talk about it and answer questions, because I think learning comes through a collective of hearing each other
Mm.
and being able to share knowledge and being open. I think my hope for 2025 is healing at a collective level by being conscious.
Mm.
And what that means is that we always start with goals for myself every year. But I challenge everyone to say, let's have a goal for us as humanity. And
Wow.
for that, my part is going to be to do whatever it is, whether it's I want to do a little more exercise, I want to change my diet, I want to use more vegetables, or I want to learn to meditate the right way, whatever it is. But when you're thinking about it, it's not for me and my body, but it's so that I can then make a difference to the community and the collective that we live in, because whatever tweak you make is going to raise the conscious level of your community, because your change gets witnessed by someone else. They ask you what you're doing, they start to do it. And together we start to have much better habits that are going to help raise awareness and at the same time reduce all the hurt that is ongoing in our world. And whatever is happening in another part that you can't control, it's fair. But we can control what we're doing for them. Because if you feel that the good you do is going to impact them, believe me, it is. And there's research to show it. So that is my hope. And, about a couple of years ago, my dad was telling me, do you know your grandfather studied Ayurveda and was, helping people in his day and age, giving them the right powders and the mixes to heal. And I was like, I did not know that. But now I know it's within my ancestors' lineage, and therefore it's now my responsibility to translate all of my learnings and potentially his through the intuition I have to the rest of the world. And that's really what I'm hoping to be able to accomplish. But for that, I need the community, and I need everyone to give me that platform to do it.
That's beautifully said. Wow. What a strong request. And I've never created a goal for humanity myself. So I will be taking that on for the new
That's
year.
awesome.
Yeah, thank you for the inspiration. You're incredible. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world. I know it was brave and courageous to step out of one path into another, and just hearing your evolution of your own beliefs and your own work in yourself and how you're still a servant leader through and through is really powerful. So thank you for everything you're doing for humans and humanity and the collective.
Thank you, Elena. This was so wonderful to be able to chat with you and share my voice on your podcast.
Have a beautiful month, and thank you again for serving everyone.
Thank you.
If this conversation sparks something for you, let it move through your week. Take it with you, take on one small action to move the ball forward. And if you want to join our community of leaders who are daring to lead with courage and heart, you can find that at www.elenaarmijo.com or www.thec-suitecollective.com. I reserve a small number of complimentary 20-minute sessions for leaders who want clarity on what they need and insight into what is getting in the way. The practical next steps that create real movement and results in your leadership journey. So you can schedule a call through the link below. It's in the description. Like, subscribe. Thank you for listening, for showing up, and for doing the work of being human together.